All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming out. So my name is Susan, and I'm going to be talking about the top K off-policy correction for a reinforced recommender system. So I just want to ask everyone, like, what might come to mind when, I guess, reinforcement learning is mentioned? Like, any ideas, thoughts? What's the first thing that kind of comes to mind? Volunteers?
Several terms like policy and environment, agent, things like that.
Okay.
Policy and policy.
Learning from mistakes.
Good, good. Yeah, that's good. Any sort of like use cases maybe in real life?
Gameplay.
Gameplay, yeah, my favorite.
Self-driving cars.
Self-driving cars, awesome. Yeah, so I guess that's just wanted to, get some of what you think is a typical reinforcement learning scenario. And what about for recommender systems? Like what comes to mind? Anyone? Like a use case in real life? Huh? Spotify? Yeah, very typical. Yeah, Spotify. Huh?
Anything, everything we ever use?
Yep. I guess everything on your phone, everything online. Yeah, so I guess the reason why I wanted to ask that is because I guess we have pretty different ideas, perhaps sometimes, of these two use cases. Like maybe for the use cases of reinforcement learning, you might be thinking like games, like I guess Google DeepMind's Go playing bot. And then for recommender systems, a typical thing that comes to mind might be like Spotify or YouTube, Netflix, right? So I guess the reason why this paper is really interesting to me is that it's a way to kind of combine these two, like kind of like areas, right? So it's pretty interesting. So I just want to go through the YouTube recommender system in brief, and then go through the reinforced algorithm, and then how that's applied to YouTube, and then another contribution of the paper, which is off-policy correction. And I just wanted to, that might make more sense in a little bit. And then after a short break, we'll have a part 2 with going through the experiments that they did, and then we'll have a discussion. All right, so first of all, YouTube uses a multi-stage rexus. So what this means is that because they have such a wide, large amount of videos, large amount of users, so I guess when you're thinking about it, like it's very sparse data, right? It's like when you have like millions of videos for one person, they might have only interacted with like several hundred, right? Several hundred out of millions is very, very little. So you can't really, it's very sparse data in that regard. So one thing that they want to do, I guess what they have in production in YouTube right now, this is a diagram taken from a previous paper, which Omar has talking about, right? And you can find the video on ACE, plug. But so they've broken down the problem into two parts. First of all, they have the millions and millions of videos, which is what is referred to as the video corpus. From these millions of videos, they want a way to kind of narrow it down to hundreds of videos first, right? So then they can choose these hundreds of videos that are more relevant. Let's say it's like cat videos of cats that are Canadian cats, right? So like maybe there's millions of videos that are not Canadian cat videos, but then maybe it could narrow it down to like at least like several hundred that vaguely represent that. And then they have the second portion, which is the ranking, the ranker portion of the recommender system. And then from then on, they will kind of like rank it to what displays onto your screen. So the problem of this particular paper is training the candidate generation to be better, right? Because this portion of the recommender system is still very important, right? Because I guess they realize that going from this to that is a bit, I guess, first of all, expensive, or I guess you have any gems from your talk?
I still like this model.
Yeah?
I'll say this model
Cool. But so they want, whenever I say like they're training the agent, I guess I'm definitely meaning the candidate generator part of the YouTube recommender system. So the action is they want to take hundreds of videos from millions. This is what they are training with reinforcement learning. So right now I'm going to go through the reinforced algorithm, and before that I'll go into a very kind of general overview of reinforcement learning and how the problem is set up. So I'm going to use an example of a very simple self-driving car throughout this talk. So let's imagine the agent, which is a little robot in this graphic. Let's say that this is a simple self-driving car that can go forward, backward, left, and right. So given that, let's say, given a state, like are they on this side of the curb or are they on that side of the curb? Like given the kind of environment, right, given the state S, what could they decide to do given state? So the A is the available action space, which is what I mentioned for like going forward, backward, left, right. And then after doing that, so let's say given that they are on the right side of the curb and they decide that they're going to make a right turn. After they make a right turn, that action then impacts the environment, right? Because with a car, you definitely impact the environment depending on if the space you moved into is occupied or not sometimes. Yeah, so I guess after that, the environment has some sort of reaction, and then we get
the sender on your
left side. This thing?
Yes.
Okay, will do. And the antenna like, out here?
Yeah.
Okay. Can they not hear? Yeah, thanks. All right, perfect. Yeah, sorry about that. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, because we're streaming online as well, so, you know, if they can't hear it, then. All right, so hopefully it's all good. Yeah, so given this car has done this activity and interacted with the environment, then now there's a feedback that could come in the form of a reward. So let's say they don't hit anything. It could be a positive reward. And if they hit something, it could be a very negative reward. So this is usually like defined in like the research that people are conducting. And then after that, they get the next state after the interaction, if that makes sense. So like given a new state, what is their next action, right? Like, okay, so just to like bring it all together, state is like, let's say I'm on the right side of the curb. Action is out of 4 directions, I choose to turn right. After I turn right, I don't hit something, the reward is positive, so I remember that. And then given the new state is like, maybe I'm here, what should I do next? So this is kind of like one whole step or one whole cycle of the reinforcement learning problem here. And what is going on is that given maybe the reward function, like if it's positive or negative, then maybe, well, the agent will learn to do things that give it a positive reward more often, right? So if there's no one near me and I go there, that's fine. I'll learn to do that more often. If there's someone like right in front of me or right in that direction and then I go there and I get a negative reward, then I'll start to learn to avoid that action. So that is the kind of like a simple setup. And just to quickly go over the initial state, because sometimes you're starting the car from like a different location, right? Let's say you're starting from this side of the curve versus that side of the curve. That's a different initial state. And then the discount factor is so that they can have a sort of like discounted, like the present value of all of the cumulative rewards up to like the future. So that if maybe doing this step will cause me to crash 3 steps later, that'll still be accounted for. Like I'm not going to like only just do what's not negative at this immediate time step. Like it can look forward and kind of avoid those risks using the discount, like with a discount factor. So right now, just to bring that back into the YouTube use case, the state would be the user interest. So kind of like given the user's taste, given the user's interest, kind of given the context, what action should this candidate generator do? So the action that this candidate generator can do is picking from millions of videos, right? They're picking the hundreds of videos. So I guess what they're doing is they're selecting these videos, and then interacting with the environment, like it goes through the ranker, and then it shows up on the website, and then the reward would be something like clicks on the videos or like long-term view time on the videos. And then the next state would be like maybe at this time, what videos are on the site or what has the user recently been watching. And then the cycle starts again. Are there any questions about this kind of statement? Okay, so I'll, yes?
The rewarding mechanism. Is there a limit for the rewarding mechanism? Because if you don't have a limit, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if the reinforcement will bring the choices exclusively to a subset of the choices, and all the other choices are forgotten. So finally, seems like I don't know if the enforcement will make the decrease very dramatically the choices, the space of choice. So I think that there should be, if there is a mechanism that the enforcement is working, but there are also another mechanism to provide to input the other not enforced choices into the list of choices, so that there will always keep in mind, the mind is always opening to all choices. Of course, there is a more heavily favored choices to the enforced choices, but the other need to be there as well. So I don't know if I think the enforcement needs a limit. Needs a limit to keep the other not enforced choices open.
Yeah, I guess just for a quick summary of the question to see if I understand it as well. I guess the question is that, let's say they're recommending these items and there's a lot of other items as well, right? And we want to prevent those other items from being forgotten or just like ignored. Is that kind of what you were, like how they could make that account for that?
Okay, let me make an analogy. Probably you can everybody can understand it better. I'm from physics background, and in physics there is a concept called resonance.
That sounds like a combative question. Can we come back to it in a second now?
Okay, yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Just a very fast question. Can you just briefly again summarize what's the aim of candidate generation? The generator, sorry.
Yeah. So the candidate generator wants to pick from millions of videos and narrow it down to hundreds of videos. Okay. So they want to pick hundreds of relevant videos. So kind of like narrowing down the problem.
For user, right? Or for to make recommendations for one user, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So the reinforcement learning part is that they want to train this candidate generator to get better and better at picking a smaller subset from millions of videos, right? So with all the feedback, like with each kind of cycle through this, the agent should be getting better and better, right? So I guess in the beginning, one person was saying like learning from mistakes is what they thought of when they think of reinforcement learning. So this candidate generator would be learning from like their actions and the feedback from those actions. Okay. So I've mentioned the kind of simple self-driving car scenario, but then YouTube has, I guess, more, it's more complex than like maybe some of the examples that come to mind for reinforcement learning, like playing chess, playing Go, or like, so what is unique about the YouTube problem is that the user has shifting interest. So I guess state could, like here, represents like maybe the user, as I mentioned on the previous slide, like the user taste, right? But then sometimes, well, like it's very difficult for you to formulate a user's taste or their mood into the model, right? Because like the only thing YouTube knows about you is what you have done on the site. Like it's relying on your behavior on the website, which doesn't it doesn't necessarily capture everything about you, like your mood or your other tastes necessarily. So I guess one example is that if the state is like your mood, maybe today you're in a good mood, tomorrow you're in a bad mood, and the system recommends like the same exact video, same 5 videos in the same order to you on both of these days. They will get different feedback, which really is confusing, right? Because they don't know what your mood is, right? That's a very interesting problem for YouTube. And also, I guess, like, I just wanted to put this example. Celine Dion has a new album out lately. But you know, when you're younger and maybe like after some years pass, your state also changes, which is additionally confusing to, I guess, like a reinforcement learning problem. Mm-hmm.
Not exactly a question, just a comment. It's possible that a user might be searching, let's say, for a music video one day, and let's say the next day or even later the same day might be looking for a lecture or computer science or something. So even though it's the same user, according as far as YouTube knows, the goal might be completely different, you know, an hour later, because this particular user happens to be pursuing a completely different goal an hour later. Yeah. So I mean, I assume that this system does not account for that. It assumes that it's still pursuing the same task, which is to find something that the user will like, if I understand correctly, neglecting the possibility that the user might have a completely different goal an hour later or whatever, a day later. Is that the case? Or is there a possibility that
I mean, the moment you input a search key, the moment you enter a search key, you are in a different state. Even if you are the same user, you will be in a different state. So
the search query is a part of the input for this system. Is that the case?
It is search query. Anything that the user does is a part of the. And then another very important part is right now we're focusing only on candidate generation. We're not recommending anything to users, right? So it's just trying to get all the videos that are relevant to a user. The ranking happens somewhere else. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is still a challenge. Like, let's say before you put in the search, right? The comment was that sometimes it's hard for the system to know exactly what you're searching for. Maybe in the morning you're searching for music, in the afternoon you're searching for a lecture. But I guess like before you actually type that in, it might not know. But then once you type that in, that could be a part of the feedback that's in the recommender system in general. Not necessarily, like that isn't the focus of this part, because like you mentioned, I guess the ranker does take into account your search, of course, right? The candidate generator depends. Like maybe the weighting is low. Like I'm sure it's part of the features.
Just have to find the most relevant videos to you at any given time. But for the candidate generation, it's not really a commander system. It's more like classification where anything with probability more than 40%, for example, will be one of the ones.
It's what happens if you are logged in, like log in your YouTube account and go to YouTube like just directly. So the first you see it's that, right?
If I understand correctly, so your search queries as well as your history are both components of the input.
Yes.
All right. So back to but I mean, like all of that, I guess, is just to say it's pretty difficult for YouTube to do reinforcement learning. theoretically. And also YouTube videos are being uploaded constantly throughout the day as well. Like 500 hours are uploaded a minute according to some data I found from, like it's not even the newest data, so I imagine it might increase. But this is kind of saying that the action space is not necessarily constant. So just like to bring it back to the kind of very simple self-driving car, like when you're training usually, like let's say you can go 4 directions and you will just be able to do those 4 directions throughout the training. It's not like suddenly during the same training you suddenly can go diagonally and then suddenly you can like jump, right? Like during typical like that kind of reinforcement learning. But for this situation, like you're training on getting better at these actions, but these actions are actually changing during this time as videos are being uploaded, right? So that is another unique challenge. So right now, I'm going to go into the reinforced algorithm. So this is an algorithm which, I guess on a very high level, it seems it wants to learn a policy. I mean, I'll go through all the math. I'll go through the math in a little bit. But I guess on a broad overview, it wants to learn a policy that given a state, like given kind of what the user has done up to now, what should I do given that? So the policy is kind of like a sort of, maybe saying heuristic is too like broad, but kind of, if you want to think of a very high level, like a sort of like heuristic that given that you have recently watched these videos, what should it pick from the millions of videos to be those more smaller subset of relevant videos? Yeah, so the state is like what you have done up to now, your behavior up to now. The reinforced algorithm is, I guess, this part. And just as a kind of disclaimer, like in recent years, I find that in the literature, it's often referred to as policy gradient. So sometimes you might see online like policy gradient, and then usually even the authors of this particular paper have kind of use it like synonymously sometimes. So just in case you encounter it online and are a bit confused, like if I say policy gradient and reinforce, I'm just kind of using it interchangeably. But yeah, reinforce is they're learning a parameterized policy. So they assume there is this kind of heuristic, this policy, and that it has parameters. And these parameters are theta here, and pi depicts the policy. So this policy will output probabilities for each action available given the state, which is the behavior of the user perhaps up to this point, and the parameters. So does that kind of make sense to people? Not necessarily, yeah. It'll probably make more sense as I go on as well. Just give me a second.
You might just quickly repeat that? You might quickly repeat that?
Yeah, so the policy is seeking to learn some sort of overall heuristic about given the state that the the candidate generator is in. So maybe given your past behavior, right? Given that you have watched like this video recently, what should it pick as those hundreds of videos?
That's no for the reduction process, right?
Oh, sorry.
That's no for the reduction process? Okay.
Yes. The candidate generator. Yep.
Yeah, I have a question. So the agent here is the thing that actually influences or affects the candidate generation, right?
The agent is the candidate generator.
Okay, I see. And policy is in this context what? Something that determines the policy is what determines how the candidate is composed, or I'm getting confused with the relationship between agent, the candidate, and policy here.
Okay, yeah, so the agent is the candidate generator in this case. The agent, I guess this term in reinforcement learning is just like the thing that's getting better and better. So in this case, the candidate generator is the thing that's getting better and better. So the agent is the candidate generator in this case, and the agent wants to use this policy to pick the action.
I see.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
So a policy could be considered as a model in a deep learning perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a model of like that
Reinforcement
outputs of
of-
behavior. Yeah. So hopefully that kind of, that should become more clear as I go on as well. So I guess for right now, I'm just going to say that the policy is has parameters, and these parameters are the things that are being changed with the reinforcement learning. So the policy is what I guess when I say agent getting better or agent learning, agent training, that's the same as like the policy parameters being learned, right? Parameters being learned, parameters being trained. Like that's something that's a terminology I think we all can get behind, right? So this kind of is able to address the bigger the state changing, the action changing as well, because it's kind of the way they formulate this is that it's a stochastic policy in which, because there is a probability, so it's not necessarily recommending the same things always. So I guess just to bring it back to a very small example again, let's say you're the simple self-driving car and you can go like in these 4 directions. The output of this policy might be that the probability of action 1 going forward is like 0.6, right? So 0.6 kind of the time you will go forward. Yeah, if that makes sense. And then so for videos, it's just like out of 1 to maybe like 1 million videos, like the probability of showing this video is like some number. And then they add up to 1. Yeah.
And the action here, like AT would be a list of candidates, would be one list of candidates, or would it be one component of a list of candidates?
I would say it's 1 video.
Video? Okay.
Should I or should I not put it in that list?
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess, that
So it has 2 values, 0 and 1, in the list or not in the list.
Sure, but then you still need to optimize for the whole list.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But that's the next step. What about this step is just the. Right?
I think you're still optimizing this step for the whole list because you still need to look at the future work, right?
Right. Okay, anyway, yeah.
Yeah, but then the ranker will, I guess in this entire paper, we're assuming the ranker, this component afterwards, like right now we're making this thing being better and better. Maybe that's not the best graphic. This one, right, the red box. And I guess throughout this paper, we're kind of assuming that the ranker portion is doing a decent job. Like we're not assuming that maybe this is getting better and better, but the ranker is like, just like purposely trying to like, show all the wrong videos. Like we're assuming that the ranker is like doing decently at showing the actual correct videos. I personally think is one of the assumptions. So,
Just a very short, just fine, not much. So we build a list first, and after the list was complete, there is a ranker algorithm to rank the list, right? Okay, got it.
yeah, like kind of further like do something to like make the list.
There's actually another YouTube paper this year where they apply reinforcement learning to the ranking problem after the candidates are output. Yeah, so something to look into.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is going into how exactly the agent, aka candidate generator, is getting better and better. So it's formulated, like what I mentioned, it's making the policy parameters better and better, because as the policy parameters get more and more accurate, then the agent can carry out more and more accurate actions. In other words, the candidate generator is picking more and more relevant videos. So how is this done? Just to bring into some terminology, the trajectory first is this terminology they use to represent I guess, the user's state and behavior up to this point. So it might start at like state 1, which is like maybe like the first state that they're in, and then the action that they did at that state, which leads to a second state. And then from state 2, like S2, they carry out action 2, and so on. So this is kind of just like a whole representation of like their actions up to like time t. And so that is called the trajectory, right? That makes sense. Like what the user has done up to up to now, or up to time t. And then now we formulate the reward, right? Because before in that graphic, like it mentions like the agent wants to get better and better at kind of like getting like higher long-term reward. So in this case, for YouTube, the reward is kind of consisting of maybe like view time or clicks, or I guess it varies sometimes. In this paper, they do like watch time and clicks, but I think sometimes they try out different things. So you might read other things in other papers, but for the sake of this paper, it's just some sort of like user engagement. And here they, they notate it as like big R of trajectory. So like this means the cumulative reward given this trajectory of this user is equal to, I guess, obviously the sum of the rewards at time t, like sum together over the trajectory. So what does that mean? So RT might be like R1, perhaps would be when in state 1, I did action 1, and then I got reward 1, right? And then state 2, I did action 2, I got reward 2.
Yeah, actually, on YouTube, users have a long history of actions. So what is time t? Is it like now, or do they like is it the as kind of a session, which would they specify? Because on YouTube you click like maybe each day like 10 videos. So is it like t 1 week, 1 month? It can be 1 month, something like that, or?
I think that's one thing that could be a hyperparameter in this case. Okay. So they don't necessarily say like this is the best time, like this is a time window, like this is something that can be adjusted, right? Like the state 1, the initial state, you could say it's like from this session beginning, or you could say it's from yesterday. I guess they did it, this is not the point of this paper to optimize the trajectory, so I think they just kind of had some sort of rule and then they did that. Like maybe if someone recalls this detail, like maybe they can bring it up. I think that they didn't purposely try to optimize the trajectory in this paper. Yeah. Yeah, so I think just ignore that end part. Like it's just like the reward is given the state and the action is what I guess what I said verbally. And then one thing to note, which I've kind of simplified in this notation, is that the RT can be like discounted, right? Like it could be that maybe in what they think is the reward tomorrow could be discounted, but like just for the purpose of this notation, just like you can substitute whatever discount in that RT there. Yeah. Oh, so the part I meant to say with the part after the semicolon is just that. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess it's like, yeah, so just to go over it again, the cumulative reward, yeah, given expected trajectory, given the trajectory is the summation of the rewards at each step. Yeah, and then all the steps together are the trajectory. Yeah.
These are two different equations.
Yeah. The semicolon is not supposed to be part of the math.
But you did say that in the beginning.
Yeah, but you
second
know,
part of it.
Yeah, just to make it clear, because sometimes you like read the presentation while you're trying to like listen. I get it. I totally get it. So I guess given these two things, then you can say that you want to maximize the expected value of the total reward given the trajectory, right? This is the cumulative reward, but you only have like expected value of it. You want to maximize the expected value of it. And then this is just like the parameters of the policy, and then the tau given pi theta means that the expected value of the reward of this trajectory, but this trajectory is generated by this policy. Yeah, so it's like we're assuming that the trajectory is generated by this policy. Actually, that makes sense then. For jury, the problem is like we're assuming that the trajectory is like all generated from this policy. So it might be like whenever the policy is starting for this user. But it really depends, as you will see later. But for now, let's say that's the case. Yes.
Okay, the policy, choose the maximum of the policy the E function. Is the E function a continuous function or discrete function?
Here?
Yeah.
Here it happens to be discrete because they're treating the each video is a discrete action. If that makes sense. Yeah, like the times are like 1, 2, 3, 2t. Like they're discrete times. Yeah. Does that kind of make sense or?
It's not. It's not about what I'm asking. Probably my question is not easy to state. Let's go for
I think
yeah.
this question will be, you're trying to maximize something. What you're trying to maximize, is it a continuous or discrete value? Because if it's a continuous value, then it makes sense to maximize it, where 0.14 is less than 0.17.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it's about what I'm asking.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, so you're just asking if like okay, let's say this comes to a numerical value. Is that like? I would say it's continuous. Yeah.
It's continuous function based on discrete history, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it comes to my next question: how you convert the discrete history into a continuous function?
But you don't need to, right? So it takes it as an input by itself, and based on the previous session, previous history of the past policies, you try to predict if this policy is actually doing good or not. So you're not trying to optimize anything, you're just trying to see, given that policy, given this trajectory, should I take that action or no?
So I guess confused me there, the first part of the question. So is it continuous, converted into a treat as a discrete? Is that what you said?
Continuous, no, wait, what?
That's why I'm a bit confused. Because so essentially this is it's like continuous data values, and when you're looking at it in discrete. So I guess that's what I heard.
No. We're saying the input is discrete, right? The input is T1, T2.
Right.
How can we change that discrete variable or discrete
No,
value?
that's the second question, but the first question was.
His first question, he was only asking if the expected value is it discrete or not. That's your first question, and then the second question is how can we change from discrete to continuous?
Yeah. Maybe it'll become a bit more clear on the next one because I think the next step. But okay, so right now let me just like quickly rephrase everything up to now because I know it's confusing. We're training this agent, which is the candidate generator, to get better and better at picking hundreds of videos from millions of videos. It's doing that by learning the parameters of a policy. So therefore, we want to get the parameters of the policy theta to be better and better with, the training, right? So what are we doing to do that? Here we're doing the gradient ascent. So we want to, like the previous slide said, to maximize the expected cumulative reward given this policy. So that's that part, expected reward of the expected cumulative reward. And we want to update the parameters with like the gradient step. So I guess even the author of this paper has mentioned that, well, like one of the authors has mentioned that she thinks about this as being pretty similar to like a typical supervised learning problem where you are doing maybe gradient descent with regards to minimizing a loss. And here in this reinforced algorithm, you are doing gradient ascent with regards to maximizing a function. And then you're updating these parameters accordingly, right? So hopefully that can connect some dots.
So you are using gradients which are dependent on was it theta?
Parameters.
Theta, the parameters against some, it's not loss, right?
No, so not loss, reward.
Reward. So it's okay.
Maximize reward.
Yeah, I see.
Gradient ascent.
Yeah. Yeah, I got confused with weight and loss.
Yeah, I know that.
I apologize. Can you, I just don't recall what the data was for.
The theta is the parameters of the policy. Yeah. Feel free to ask any clarifying questions at any point. So this is what the first equation is. It's doing gradient ascent to improve the parameters theta of the policy. And that lambda there is just a sort of like hyperparameter like learning rate. So I mean, that's very similar to gradient descent that we use in typically. So just to break out that part, that's like the gradient, right? This is the gradient of the expected value of the expected cumulative reward. They use this very common trick in the literature called log trick. So they rewrite this part of the equation to this part. So I'm just going to give a quick intuition of how, I'll go into the details on the next slide, but the intuition is that they want to rewrite the expected value of the cumulative reward in terms of the reward at time step t, right? Because remember that this is like the sum of everything. So that's like across all the rewards. And then time step t is like, I guess, first of all, easier to get because it's just like, you know, like you do this action at this state and you get this reward. So this one is, I guess, very high-levelly better, easier to get. And then they want to rewrite also like this weights the log likelihood of the policy. So this might make more sense in a second, but basically it's like if the reward at time step t is higher, then like this log likelihood would be weighted higher. That makes sense? Or and another reason they do this is that they want to rewrite this term in terms of just like the reward at time step t and then something that's in terms of that can be gotten with like the parameters, like in terms of the parameters theta. Right? So then it's more, I guess like, I wouldn't say it's like decomposable, but like kind of. Yeah.
So it looks like, but just the log portion. Why did you use the log?
Okay, that will make more sense after. I just want to say that they will do this, and I'll go into the detail of how they did it. Yeah, but okay. So just maybe I'm getting the question. So like this term is actually the log likelihood, right? Because like the policy outputs like a probability. Yeah, so that term is log likelihood. So, okay, I know this is like annoying, like you're like looking at it. I swear, I hope you'll get it. So this is the first term you saw on the last slide. This is the last term you saw on the last slide, okay? So let me start by saying what is the log trick. The log trick is that thing on the bottom. So let's start on the very last row of the log trick. Yeah, perfect, thanks. Nice. Yeah, okay, awesome. Yeah, so I guess we can agree that the gradient of the policy is equal to this. I think we can agree on this. Yes, we can agree. Okay, so the reason why this also equals to this is because I guess the gradient of a logged of a function is equal to like 1 over that function of like, this is like a derivative rule, right? So like, hopefully people remember this. it should be like reasonably like the derivative of a log of pi would equal to like kind of gradient, and I should say gradient of pi over like times 1 over pi. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. Okay, if you don't remember it, you know, just like it's the derivative rule, and I'm not gonna like prove it or anything. It's left as an exercise to the reader. Yeah, so hopefully this we can agree on. Yes?
So why people can't see where you're pointing? Can you say which slide you're talking about?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I just went through the log trick, which is the box on the right side, and then I guess it's easier if you look at it from the third equation, which equals to the second equation, which equals to the first equation because of like derivative rules. Yeah, so I guess that's what I just went through. And then this is the reward function, which is the second green box. It's just here, so I don't have to flip to the previous slide to remind you that this is that. So now I'm back to the very, very first component, which is the gradient of the expected value of the reward. So I guess from the first to the second part is maybe where I got stuck for a little bit. I would say that the reason, because this is this, right? So how come this is equals to the sum of the policies, because this has an expected value term, and this doesn't, right? So I'm just going to like go back into more simple mathematics. Like the expected value of, let's say, what you get of rolling a 6-sided die is like the reward, which is like 1 times the probability of getting 1, which is 1 over 6, plus rolling 2 and the probability of getting 2, 1 over 6, and so on, right? You add that up. So like for here, because this is probability, the expected value is the probability at time t times the reward of time t. And from time equals 0 to the end of the trajectory. So hopefully that makes sense why the first portion equals the second portion. I think that was like the biggest, like, I was like, oh, this paper, you know, I get it. Yeah, I think that was a step that I was like, okay, if I think about it that way and kind of like the expected value of like, let's say a dice roll, then that makes sense. And so I guess we can all agree that the gradient of a sum term is equal to the sum of a gradient of what's inside the term. And then from here on, we are using this is the okay, I'm just gonna read it for online people. The gradient of the policy times the reward. So the gradient of the policy, because of the log trick, we can rewrite it as this thing. So that's here. So hopefully people can see it. So that whole thing becomes this. Yeah, so they do the log trick and make it like this, and then from here we get, I'm just like rearranging it, and then this becomes the last term of the last slide, the previous slide. So hopefully this thing made sense. If not, you can look at the slides online, or just tell me right now actually if there's any confusion point. Okay. Yeah, so just to go through another. Okay, so now we have this. Just to sum up again, we want to make the parameters better and better so that the candidate generator can get better and better at picking videos, right? I think hopefully we can all agree on that. So now we have the way of formulating how exactly we're improving the parameters, which is with gradient ascent. And from here on, we have the formulation, but there are still some missing ingredients we need, right? Like, I guess, yeah. So I'm gonna go into what is still missing. So another problem that YouTube is facing is that the feedback, so here when I mention feedback, I just mean like people's behavior, like whether they click on it, so it's like the historical like feedback. This is biased by previous or other recommenders. So in the paper, the authors mentioned that they have many ongoing experiments that are in production. So when I'm going on YouTube, I could be actually getting videos from like multiple of these experiments. One of these, which is this kind of like bot do, or like the one that we're training with the parameters, being gradient ascented. Yeah, so like it could be that I'm encountering multiple of them, and only one of them is like the target policy that this method is training. The rest are what in this paper is called the behavior policy, which means that maybe this other kind of experiment is causing people to maybe this one recommended Ariana Grande. So I am starting to go down Ariana Grande rabbit hole, and then when it gets to the target policy might say, given that Susan has recently watched Ariana Grande, which is the trajectory in this training process, I'm going to also recommend Ariana Grande. But I guess like to sum up the issue here is that the target policy, the one that we are training, it might not be getting better and better at recommending relevant videos necessarily, but it might just be recommending these videos because some other recommender was likely to have recommended it. That was a long sentence. Yeah.
The other recommender could be potentially one of the older policies.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah, so it could be like former iterations of this, or just like anything other than this one that we're training with, like right now.
Could you read the previous act?
Sure. The previous policy or the previous agent.
Yeah, like old agents that were like deployed yesterday.
It wasn't updated at that point. For every update, you use the previous policies to change to the new one, right? So one of the older ones was going deep into one specific kind of a video. Therefore, the future ones might get stuck into recommending the same category, the same type of videos. So that's one of the main challenges with model, right?
That's the biases.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, I think it's a good example. Like, we all have one of these topics on YouTube. Actually, do you know how I got this screenshot? I opened incognito mode YouTube, and then I just like started clicking like Ariana Grande, Ariana Grande, Ariana Grande, and then like it started to like do this. So it's true. It's true. What I did, right? Yeah, the trajectory of what I did.
Does this, so this is current, right?
Because there's no any previous.
No, I'm talking about mutual.
No, that's not. The current one is the one that you talked about in the beginning.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
Does the period that you watch the movie matter?
Sorry?
Does the period you watch the movie matter? My question is, for example, this Ariana Grande, you clicked it, open it, and play it for one second, and close it, and re-click it. So does that include you played it twice, you listen to the music twice, or you just you don't like it at all because you just listen to 1 second of it?
I guess they define that differently.
Part of the word function is based on how long you watch the video for.
Okay.
Right, so the word function, after all, you're trying to optimize for the word, right? You're trying to maximize the future word. Part of it is based on how long did you watch the video, how many times did you watch it. All of these make up that word function.
So, yeah, okay, so I guess we can all agree on other experiments and other recommenders could bias the training of this current one that we're learning with, like doing reinforcement learning on. So just as a kind of, not notation, but like, okay, terminology, from here on, we'll call these like off-policy policies, I guess. Like these are off-policy and that is on-policy. The one that is generated with the policy in question that we are training. On policy, and then these others are off policy. Yeah, off policy policies. So just to sum up that issue that I mentioned, like the feedback could, like one issue is just like the user's behavior or feedback could be just from other agents in production. And another thing that the authors mentioned is that the agent is refreshed every 5 hours. So it's kind of like I'm training this agent, I'm updating these parameters, but then the recommendations or the candidate generations of these only start to appear in the system after 5 hours. Right? So it's kind of like as if right now I'm training the policy that will happen in 5 hours for YouTube in production. Yeah, and then so this is what I mentioned is like it's learning with off-policy feedback, which could be generated from other experience. Okay, so right now we go into the off-policy correction where they try to account for that. So in the paper, just as a broad overview of what this slide is trying to do, basically we have addressed the problem, which is that there are off-policy things that could be affecting the accuracy of the training of our current parameters, right? So because of that, they want to downweight the off-policy stuff. So they introduced this new notation, which is beta theta prime. So beta is like all the off-policy stuff. So there are other experiments. And this is kind of the same. This is a probability. And the theta prime is just to say that the parameters are not necessarily the same as the ones that we're training, right? There are just some other parameters of some other policies, off-policy policies, that we don't want to impact us. So this is like the same gradient like step that we've been talking about before, and this is like the gradient ascent like updating, right? So they're just like adding in a term that if it's likely that this behavior was generated by other policies, generated by off-policy policies, this term will become bigger, right? And then therefore this gradient kind of learning will become smaller. Like this term will be smaller, if that makes sense. So then that means like off-policy kind of like recommendations. I'm gonna say recommendations, okay? Like candidate generations, which influence the recommenders. You get it, but like they just want to say that this makes the behavior generated from other policies less impactful on the training of this policy. And then, of course, like conversely, if it's highly likely that this behavior was generated from this policy in question, then this term will be large, and it will account better in the gradient ascent step. And then this is just like the step, the term that we have seen before, the equation that we've seen before. So they just want to downweigh the kind of like impact of off-policy stuff. So in the paper, they do have kind of two variants of this one. So one is for, they say that in previous literature, a lot of this existing off-policy correction is tailored for top one reinforcement learning. Yes?
Is that a Bellman equation?
I don't know.
No?
Doesn't look familiar to that.
I think it's just weight adjustment.
Okay.
They're just down weighting.
Yeah.
And this is the same.
So I guess my question is, because you're saying that as you increase that other off-policy, overall accuracy would go down, which is more accurate, or not so much rather whole. So my question is, what makes the beta prime increase?
Sorry, what was the last bit?
What makes that term increase?
Increase?
The beta prime.
So this. Wait. Oh, that's why. You have experience. Yeah, so this term means how likely it is that this behavior. So let's say I am clicking on something. Like I could, maybe here I click on, like, okay, let's figure out.
Cats.
Okay, cats. Like it could be that I see the cats that are recommended and I click on it because the target policy was good at finding what I like. That's one probability. The other probability is that I was recommended cats and clicked on cats because this off-policy policy recommended it eventually. So I'm doing the same behavior. This behavior is still logged into the training of target policy, right? But like the same behavior could have different reasons for appearing in the training data of this. So they want to find a way to detect and downweight the behaviors in this trajectory that are more likely to have come from here. Because it's really hard to say, right? Like
That's the purpose of that off-policy correction.
Sorry?
What is theta ball?
Theta prime? This one?
All the PIs together also.
The off policy, the other policies.
So there are 12, or this was like a snapshot of that theta in 5 hours?
Yeah, you could kind of say there are, this is the model we're training, the target model, the target policy, and this is just like others, I guess.
So this is the previous snapshot of the model, which has the previous info and so on.
Pi theta, pi, this policy, including Ariana Grande, but the beta function including dogs, cats, and birds, and all kinds of things except Grande, right? Ariana Grande. Everything else, other than the theta, is included in theta prime. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah,
So
just
the space of theta prime is actually larger than theta? What?
Definitely,
Definitely,
because
right.
you used everything in the past. So if
Yeah.
you're time step 10, then the new T is only the 10th step, but then the theta prime is 9, which had 8, 7, 6, everything before that.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. So I guess it depends on like the other recommenders that did the stuff in the past as well. And I think that's a good point that you mentioned is that like let's pretend that data like this other policy actually only recommends everything that's not Ariana Grande. So if I get Ariana Grande now, that means this term will be high because it's likely that the current policy recommended Ariana and not the others, right? Because we don't see that behavior from the other policies. Yeah, so that's a good example, an extreme example, and that might illustrate it better. Yeah, so I think.
Ask a question from online.
Awesome.
They're saying considering that user behavior is constantly changing and video repo is constantly updated, is an on-policy update a better approach than off-policy?
On-policy. Sorry, what was the last thing?
So given that things are changing, is an on-policy update a better approach than off-policy?
I have my thoughts on that. My thought is that because it allows for some sort of exploration as well, that's just my thought. So let's say, okay, let's pretend beta is cats, dogs only. Pi is Ariana Grande only, right? If we do have some sort of this, like it's still in this equation, so it could allow the user to still encounter cats and dogs, if that makes sense. Like the exploration aspect of the platform, if that makes sense. Hopefully they.
So yeah, like my perspective, it will be two perspectives. Number first, one on policy will require much more computational resources than offline, because in offline you're doing batch, so it's much easier to do it in batch than just keep on updating the policy. Second thing is, if it's online and you go down that rabbit hole of Ariana Grande, it's going to keep doing that, and it's going to take much longer to update the parameters to start looking at different stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks. So yeah, now that we have that, I just want to show like the last component of this. So now we have the parameters. we have a way to downweight the biases of like other policies. So now what the output of this policy actually would look like is just like, this is just like a standard softmax, and then given like the states and then a vector of the actions previously. And then this term is just like a temperature term. They say they set like 1. So that could adjust like the smoothness of the softmax in a sense. So this is just like they didn't like try to like change softmax or anything. They just did it. So using this, we're able to get this term, which can then update the gradient on like previous slide. So I guess just like a quickly to go through it, like, okay, we have this. We formulated this. But how are we getting this? We still need this, and that's done with softmax. Yeah, so that's where it kind of like ties in.
Could you repeat that last part?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have this, right? We want to update this so that the parameters get better and better. So theoretically, we still need, like if we can't get the values of this, then we can't compute this. Yeah, so that's done with softmax. But there is just one last part. So this is like, okay, so just quickly, here, no, not here.
So it's a huge space. How do they decide what they do?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Pi theta, huge space. Not necessarily, because like the parameters are just like of this kind of like, I guess, functional form of the policy, so that just depends on, I guess, how large the parameter space is.
They're looking at what the last agent only did, but the last agent is updated based on the previous ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. But yeah, they're just missing one thing. They're missing how the states are represented, right? Because the states are, let's say, given the trajectory, how, I guess, just to start with a quick thing, they're not really concerned with whether the state is good, like particularly good or particularly bad. Like whether I like Avril Lavigne is not better or worse for YouTube than if I like Celine Dion. Like it doesn't care. It's not focused on like, is the state good? Is the state bad? How can I put a value to the state? It's less focused on that. It just wants some sort of latent representation of the state. Because the previous trajectory could be big, right? It could be small. Like they want to represent it somehow. And so they're using RNN. The reason being RNNs are good at kind of taking into sequential data. So I'm not going to go into like why, because that's another whole talk. But they're using RNNs, and they're using that to represent the state. And they don't really mention why they use the ReLU in this part to kind of like get to the softmax. My guess is that they're using the ReLU to just kind of have some sort of threshold, so that like if the state isn't like past some certain threshold, then like just like ignore it. But I mean, I could be wrong. That probably should be like later, but yeah. So then they use this representation of the state to actually get like the beta theta's likelihood. So they're using this to learn like if it's likely that this behavior was generated from off policies, or like to train the current policy. Yeah, so that's pretty much what this part is doing, right? And I think that is it. We can, yeah, have break.
So you're going to take 5 minutes, stretch your legs, go out to eat, and then come back.
All right.
5 minutes. Like combating questions that you have, is the time to ask after the results, etc. Good?
There's no pizza.
Awesome. Johan.
Hi.
Don't do pizza.
I hope you've enjoyed the food. I put pizza because like the learning of like the previous trajectory of the Ascent are
So you're overfeeding pizza?
There was no, like, barely other, no, it's, you know, food in general, that's what I meant, right? Okay, all right, so I'm gonna go through the experiments mentioned in the paper. So there are 2 parts of the experiments. The authors did some kind of like evaluation on this simulated data, kind of like it's fake data basically. So for this part, the reason being that I guess on YouTube when there's multiple videos, there's no really like a necessarily correct answer. Like you have a space of, let's say, this many videos, and maybe you recommend something that I click on, and that is correct in a sense, but there's always like these other videos that didn't get recommended, and they could be correct too. So I guess in reality, they don't have a really a way to measure like this video is correct for sure, right? Like it's just like whether it's recommended and clicked or not. They only have behavior, they don't have like a truth. So the reason why they did this simulated data, I guess, is just like so they have like a truth, like they know which video is like the best video. Like they have set this fake data to say that this video is literally the best video. So they just want to see if like with off-policy correction and not, will this cause the policy being trained to learn like the true video that should be recommended. So in the case that they didn't apply off-policy correction, so this data, I want to say, is like pretty simple. Like they literally just have like a very small amount of videos, and then they just have a small amount of like actions. So compared to like the millions and millions, like this simulated case is much smaller and much contained. I guess they just wanted to test like the theoretical soundness of applying off-policy and then training the reinforcement agent's parameters. So yeah, so here they say that when they're training the reinforcement learning kind of like agent the policy parameters, that when there isn't the off-policy correction, then the agent kind of learns to recommend like all these videos across the spectrum that are not necessarily the best. So it's like a suboptimal policy. Whereas they say that in this experiment, when they apply off-policy correction, so that downweights, oh, actually I want to mention here, they set in this simplistic case that the off-policy beta is like literally the worst policy ever. Like it tries to mess things over. Like it says to favor the actions with least reward. So they're assuming that the off-policy behavior is just like trying to mess everything up. And they're saying that when they don't use off-policy correction, then it actually does screw things up. And then when they learn to downweight that off-policy, then the policy kind of can learn to ignore that noise of beta. Yeah, so this is just what they're saying in this very simple case. This is true. So yeah, any comments?
Makes sense.
All right.
Super biased, and in my opinion, this is not anyhow close representation to what it is, right? Because in the left side, they intentionally destroyed the offline policy previously, right? So if you don't correct that, then the current one is going to be messed up as well. But if you have a normal one, it would never be like that.
Yeah, no, I definitely do agree that this simple case simulated data might be in favor of this weight, just saying, but yeah, that's what they are showing, and this graph is from their paper, so yeah, publishing. I didn't say that. No. Anyway, so they test another thing out. So they argued that, I guess, like one thing that they argued was that a lot of the off-policy correction literature is favoring kind of like top one policy. So just to quickly bring that back to what I've been talking about this whole time, like top K selection is like when you pick like, you can do number K actions at the same time. So in the YouTube kind of example, like it could be like, if I'm picking 100 videos from the millions of videos, that's picking like top 100. So the K equals 100 in that case. So they're arguing that typically in reinforcement learning, it's a top one situation, because like, let's say you're doing like a simple self-driving car, like at one time you're predicting like out of like front, back, left, right, you're only going like one action at a time. You're not going left and right simultaneously. That doesn't happen, right? So they're arguing that a lot of the off-policy literature is like more tailored towards when you're picking top one in reinforcement learning. And they're saying that they have made a modification to it that is top K and is better. So in this, again, another simulated case, they assume that, I guess, like there's this spectrum of videos, and then if they apply like their top K adjustment to this, then and I think the truth is that there is 2 good videos, right? So then it does learn 2 videos, and they're saying that if they don't apply that, and they just use like what is typical in the top 1 off-policy correction literature, then it only learns 1 policy, right? As you can see, it adds to almost 1. This is like 0. Like these should all add to 1. Yeah, these should all add to 1. But they're just saying that, oh, their method is better because they account for that it's top K. In this case, K being 2, in this very simple case. So again, I guess with the previous example, I do think that it's maybe a bit oversimplification compared to their use case. So it could be just that they can theoretically say that it's decently useful. Yeah, I guess. So the last thing is they do put it in production, which is, I guess, what I personally wanted to see. I was like, yo, what's happening when they actually put it in front of people? So here, one thing I want to point out in this graph, like the video ID rank is in the graph. The lower it is, the better, the more popular it is, I would say. So it's saying that like this is a very popular video, and what's like the CDF of it being like impressions from recommendations. So just to put it very simply, it's saying that this is a popular video, and this green one is the one that this paper trained, so the one with like the top A off-policy correction. This is the experiment. They're saying that with this method, more popular videos aren't recommended as often, necessarily. Like it's lower than the blue one, right? And then that, I guess in this case, let's take the blue one. This very popular video, the very popular kind of segment of videos is already recommended in like the almost like 100% of the videos, I guess, if that makes sense. Like it's saying that like the more popular that you are, like because the CDF is like already very high, like all the popular videos are just being recommended like immediately. And then the less popular videos are like rarely being recommended. So they're saying that like with the top K off-policy correction, even less popular videos are being recommended more than without in production. So that's, I think they had some other sort of metrics, but I think maybe because this one was showing more reasonable results that maybe can be interpreted in a more easier fashion, so they focused on this result. Yeah, so I guess that's the bulk of their results, and that is.
I understand what you said. How does that? Sorry, I just want to understand how is the least popular video on this graph for the purpose of this graph? How does the least popular video get recommended more based on this graph?
So because this is a CDF, so this means that like in kind of like I'm just trying to see how online people can see it, but like maybe they can see this. Okay, so they're saying that like let's pretend this is the. I mean, I guess we can agree that this is the top 20 popular videos, 20% popular videos. The probability of them being recommended are like almost like let's say like 0.98. And then all the rest, because this is like an increment, this is like a difference. The difference between one and this are the probability of all the rest of those videos. Less popular, 80% of the video population are being recommended.
Which one is which? Is it the experiment or the paper?
Yeah, experiment is this paper. So that's saying that like the top 20% of the videos are being recommended like with less probability. Yeah.
So the control, what's the difference of the control experiment? So what's new in the control results?
The control is without top K off policy correction.
Okay.
Yeah. and I forgot if they had other types of things. I don't recall the detail, but they're just saying that like this one is top K off policy, and the rest is like it could be whatever. I forget if they had a specific thing. Yeah, but without these things, without the improvements of this paper, I guess. Yeah. So I'll move on to discussion, and maybe we'll just have some thoughts. Like this one has been mentioned, like how might reinforcement learning be applied to ranker? But then I guess like when you think about it, like they have so many experiments going on that the chances of like some other method being applied to some other
component is very likely. Omar, do you have any thoughts on how, or anyone?
It could be used the same way, right? It could be identically used the same way. We just don't know exactly how the results will be, because the deep model, the deep learning, the two-stage deep learning model that they did was really good when they performed the evaluation of, like when people ran the code, performed the evaluation between both of them, they were very similar. So there was no great improvement, but computation-wise, it requires so much more than the previous model.
Yeah, so I guess the second one is, I think Omar is also very passionate, well not passionate, like enthusiastic about this question. Could using reinforcement learning for this be like a bit overkill? Any thoughts? Yeah? I think it's
the alternative?
the current.
Model, which is the two-stage deep learning model, because there's no any difference in the precision. There's no any difference in the call based on what people reported, which I'm not quite sure if that's true or not. But if it is true, the only difference that is happening is at the p at 50, which means that the precision after the first 30 videos is different. But like who goes through the 30 videos to look at the 31st or 32nd video? So in my opinion, there's no difference. So yeah, like the current, like I would still use the current model. But again, like this is Google. They have so much technology, so much computation, so they can show off whatever technology they have.
I think one of the reasons people use weight force is whenever pipeline at some certain point it's not differentiable, so that's why we use weight force. So it's the case here. Like if you try to come up with an alternative, then the part that's not differentiable, you have to come up with a formula that's differentiable, which is more challenging.
They already had one.
They have one?
They already have a model. Like they already had a model last year, and this year this is a new model.
So the setup is the same?
The setup for the second part is the same. They just changed the first part, but the output is the same. That's why I'm like.
Did they do any sort of like benchmarking comparison?
Nope, they didn't do it actually. But that gives, I think, our right?
I see what you're saying.
Watching.
I see what you're saying. No, but that's a really good point, I think, about it being like they can grab a existing algorithm that's like differentiable, which is like probably like just convenient also for the use case, and that it addresses some of the issues that they have. Yeah, so I think any other kind of pros and cons or other RL algorithm ideas? Anyone?
I have a question not in this discussion topics. The top K, in the paper, did they define what K value should be? They experimented the K equals to 1 or equals to 2.
That's simulated. That's
simulated in the experiment. But does the K value as a stable, the result of the variance with the K stable? What I mean is, once you choose different K for each 10 or 100 K, does the conclusion of the paper change?
You know, yeah, I don't.
Can you summarize the question?
Oh yeah, so as the K changes, maybe you could just say it like louder.
Okay, my question is that if the K change, in the paper K was chosen
for S1 or S2. But my question is, if a K is not such values, but totally different values, for example, 100, does the conclusion of the paper change?
Yeah, they didn't report that.
Yeah.
They didn't report that, but honestly speaking, 99% of the time you're more interested in the very small value of K. So what K is, it's like from the top K videos, how many of them are actually relevant. If you're looking at the top 100 videos, no one is going to scroll through 100 videos.
Right.
So if you're optimizing on the top 1 or top 2, then it is actually being effective. So I think that's why they focused on the top 1 and top 2.
Okay.
And I know that this is what session-based implementation is optimizing on, is the top 1 or top 2
That's fair.
recommendations. Yeah.
That's fair. Yes.
But I have one thing. I think so. For the update policy, this assumes that the user had some interaction with the like old agent or the current agent, whatever, for it to do. But if the user doesn't have any action, I think the model is not going to do any good recommendations. So I think post starting here is really, really bad. Like, way cooler than the other deep learning model.
I see. Yeah,
Because the other deep learning model, what it does is it takes into consideration the attributes of the video. Yes, it takes into consideration as well what kind of users watched it and how long, but just the pure attributes of the videos is being considered in the older model. But this model is not. It's only based on the user interaction with the video. So but I would actually just go more and more people think.
But I guess if it's still kind of like, let's say given like older information, it might still recommend different things because of like the stochasticity, and then maybe that could still kind of cause like interactions further on. But like you said, it's not updated like immediately.
But you don't have any
no action.
policy.
Yeah.
Like,
if there's no action.
The update policy equation is divided by the old policy, right? If you don't have that, what's happening?
Right. Yeah. I see. Yeah. So there is that issue.
Huh? Okay, yeah. Be curious.
Is any questions from those who haven't asked any questions?
Well, I have a question. I think they're using the RNN for representing the state, right? So I think they are kind of using user attributes. Those already come in that part, maybe. The user and video attributes maybe come in that part of representing the state using the RNN. Because I saw the evidence.
I think it could, but I suddenly don't remember the exact amount or detail that.
I think the RNN is more to represent the user given the stuff they watch, not the attributes.
Yeah.
Maybe the attribute so yeah, like maybe the attribute plays a part, but I'm not quite sure. They didn't mention it.
But I was assuming they represent the video the user already watched by attributes of the video itself. That's what I was assuming. Like how can ultimately video should be represented using some attributes, right? So that's what I was.
No, you can do it like in so many other ways. Like matrix activation makes it in a way where it doesn't take any of the attributes, it takes the history of watching. So you can create those embeddings in so many different ways.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess like my thought is that like even if there's stuff that they didn't necessarily like go into super detail in this question, like as to what they put in the RNN because of this architecture, they could still like modify it in other experiments that they might not necessarily have in this experiment. Yeah. So, but that's I think that would be valuable to have. Yeah, in general. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Again, we have a few minutes while we're packing up, so feel free to hang out and talk to each other. If you're interested in the next workshop, come talk to me, etc. Otherwise, see you.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you for being here.
No, thank you.